Hi, welcome to this lecture on Windows Forms programming. The material I'll talk about today will come from Chapter 12 in my book C# for Artists. Here's a picture of the front cover, second edition, available from pulpfreepress.com. If you want to do GUI programming, the way that you do it is using the forms components in the System.Windows.Forms namespace. I'll be using C#, obviously, as a programming language. This lecture will simply talk about, one, how to create a simple form or window and what that gives you in terms of functionality. Talk a little bit about the form class, the inheritance hierarchy, and everything that it inherits, which gives it its power, right? And then how the messages are actually generated under the covers using, I'm going to write a little program to show you how these messages are actually, interpreted by the window. Okay, so, when you're starting to do GUI programming, you're more interested in events and handling events like button clicks, mouse in, mouse out. Okay, so how does the operating system know? Like if I click on your window or my window or some other app's window, how does it know that it's that window that's being clicked on? All right, so I'm going to talk about this concept called the message queue. Okay, and each application has its own message queue. I should say graphical user interface application has its own message queue. Okay, so the tools I'm going to be using are Windows 10. I'm running everything on a big Mac, and I've got a couple different VMs. Windows 10 operating system. I will be entering source code using Notepad++. I could use Visual Studio, and the benefit of Visual Studio is it gives you IntelliSense, which is great, right? Sometimes, though, I like, especially when I'm teaching a class and I have some new students, I like to get those guys to dive into the documentation so that they can, see what a class or an interface provides. And then when you're programming with Visual Studio, sometimes Visual Studio for small projects gets in your way because it's complicated IDE. You create a project and sometimes, Visual Studio puts a lot of extra stuff in simple projects that you just don't need to run code. And so sometimes it's easier just to have a simple, text editor and then compile your programs from the command line. We can compile these programs. I'll be using PowerShell, okay? PowerShell to execute the compiler, which is the C# CSC compiler, right? And let's just clear the screen there. Okay, for documentation, I'll be hitting, Google using Microsoft Edge. Okay, so back to the chapter. Every window that you create is going to be based on a form, okay? And the form class is found in the System.Windows.Forms namespace. Okay, so if you have buttons and menus, you want to have fancy user interface, you're going to be using a form to create that, the form class. Okay, now it's important in order to understand the power of a form to check out the inheritance hierarchy. Okay, so in object-oriented programming, everything, I call it, the power of an object, right? Whatever superpowers an object possesses, right, is a total of all the objects and or all the classes that it inherits from, its inheritance hierarchy, and all the interfaces that it implements. Okay. The best way to figure out what a class can do is to go check out the documentation. I'll come back to this page in my book in a second. Let's go check out the Windows.Form class on MSDN, okay? Now, in my opinion, the fastest way to get there is to just go to Google and type in System.Form, right? And it's usually the first thing that pops up. So, as I'm waiting for this internet connection to connect, sometimes it takes a little while, not sure why. There we go. All right. So you get a form class, right? This is in the documentation. And then you see this inheritance hierarchy, and you can click on each one of these to explore, which if you're learning to program, right, and you're just starting out, I completely recommend you spend a good deal of time exploring the .NET documentation, right? Because that's the source, man, for all the stuff you need to know. Well, most of the stuff you need to know, right? As far as how these objects interact with each other, what they're able to do, and how they behave. Okay, so we can see right here that this is the class that we're interested in, the form class, okay? And its inheritance hierarchy is its immediate base class. So the way this goes is you see these little, like, it's indented, right? System object is the very top. It's the granddaddy of everything. Then we've got Marshal by Ref object. That's the next one down. I'm going to click over here so you can see my halo. All right, Marshal by Ref object. That class provides the capability to access objects remotely across application boundaries. Component model, component. Okay, then control, and scrollable control, and then container control. So a form is a container control, which means it can contain other controls. It is a scrollable control. It is a control. It is a component. It is a Marshal by Ref object, and first of all, it's an object, right? Now, things that extend, the rest of this stuff, all this stuff down here in a straight line, shows all the different classes that extend or inherit from form. So we've got a system component model design collection editor collection form. We got a QPath dialog, service installer dialog, calendar auto format dialog, regex editor dialog. Okay, and they're in various namespaces. Okay, so everything that's a window, right, extends from form, or form forms the basis of every window. So let's just take a look at what a simple form is capable of doing. So I'm going to create a class called simple form. This comes from my book. Let's go back to the code. All right, so down here on example 12.1, I have a little program called simple form. It's a class, simple form, and if we take a look at it, we're using the system namespace, using System.Windows.Forms. Those are two using directives. And then we create a class or declare public class simple form. And then this colon means extend. And we extend the form. So what we're doing is we're creating another, you could visualize it as another window up underneath of this inheritance hierarchy, right? That is going to extend the functionality of form. So our form will be a new class that we're creating in this class ecosystem, right? And then whatever we give this class or whatever we allow this form to do, in other words, if we add buttons, text fields, whatever, then it'll be our window, right? It'll be our form. Then this main method here, public static void main, our program, in order to get this simple program to run, has to have a main. And then to actually run the form and display it, in other words, to start the event queue for that particular form, we have application.run. Application is a class in the System.Windows.Forms namespace, and it has a static method called run, and it requires a new form. So all I do here is I just say new simple form. So let's take this and actually write this code. Okay. So here I've got my Notepad++. The first thing I do, which you'll see me in these videos, is I'm going to save as the name of I'm going to create a source file, simpleform.cs, right? And it doesn't matter what I choose here, but it's going to be a C# source file, save. Now, then I'm going to create the using directives, using system, then using System.Windows.Forms. Okay, and that's all I need there. Now I'm going to declare the class public class. That's a keyword. Simple form. That's the name of my class. colon, which means extends. You can read it as extends. The form class. Open brace, closing brace. Now I'm going to create my main method because all programs need a main method to execute. Public static void. You know, when you start programming in C#, you're writing these programs, you're going to, all this stuff will become second nature. Main with a capital M. Now, if you're coming from the Java world, that usually drives you crazy, right? Because the main in Java has a lowercase m. Now, I don't need any arguments, so open brace, closing brace. Now I'm going to create application. Well, application is my class with the run method. Okay, and here I'm going to say new simple form. And all that does, it creates a new instance of simple form. And that's what that application.run method is expecting. This application.run method is expecting an instance of a form. Okay. Now, save it. Control S. Minimize this window. Pull up your command console or your PowerShell, right? If you're compiling with PowerShell, so all you do is you navigate right to the easiest way to navigate. Let's do this. There, I'm going up a directory, right? CD. Oh, if you're just starting out in programming and you're timid about using command shell and the PowerShell, you really need to start diving in to figure out how to do that. Okay? Because it really saves you a lot of time. So, but there are some neat shortcuts, right? So I want to change directories, right? So CD is the command to change directories. Here I have a form, or I want to go to this simple form directory, or this folder. So I type CD here, and you can just drag that folder into that window, and it saves me having to type all that stuff. So I hit return, and boom, bada bing, bada boom, you're smoking cigarettes. All right, let's go ahead and close that. I'm in the simple form directory. I can do a dir and I can see what's in there. So I have my simple form source file. Now I'm going to compile that csc simple form.cs. All right. Oh, it says type or namespace. So I must have made a mistake in my code. So just like in my class, right, I'm going to go back here to my code. From. There we go. How about that? Control save. Now that's another thing that IntelliSense, right, or Visual Studio would have highlighted that, because really programming is attention to detail, and there was no such identifier as form, from. Right, from in my code. So, and there's no such class called from in the System.Windows.Forms namespace, right? So that's a limitation, right, of using Notepad++. Hey, that's okay. It just keeps you on your toes. So save that file. Now let's compile again. All right, pull up PowerShell and just hit the up arrow key. And now everything looks like it went well, right? Didn't get any errors. Okay, so now you're in PowerShell. If I want to compile this, I have to go // and just type simple form. All right, now my window opened up way over there. So there's my window. All right. Sorry. All right. So what does that give me? Well, it's a window, right? I can drag it. I can move it around. Okay, I can change its height and width, right? I can grab it like that. I can go out this way. I can go down this way. I can minimize it. If I click the minimize, whoop, it goes off the screen because I'm only showing a portion of the screen. I can maximize it. Boom, it gets real big. Now I got to bring it back down. So all you saw was a big white space. This is the title bar. I don't have a title. I have to set a property in order to have some text there. All right, I can close the window. Now, as long as I'm running that, right, see the PowerShell is kind of like, how would you say, not doing anything. Well, it's doing something. It's running this program right now. Watch what happens. In other words, if you look at the PowerShell, there's no prompt. It's hung right there, right? It's blocked, I should say, because I'm running this program. If I click that window, you'll see that return to the prompt like that. Okay. Now, I'm going to show you how to compile this using the command prompt. Well, the compiling is about the same, so here we go. There's a command prompt. Okay, it's a little bit different. It's not the PowerShell. Now I can still do change directory, right? CD, and then I can open up this projects folder, just like I did before. Okay, drag that simple form folder over there, change directories to it. Do a directory, see what's in there. All right. I see my executable. So just type simple form. I don't have to do // because in command prompt, it'll look in the active directory for that program. All right. But the neat thing here, I could do this in PowerShell too. I just don't, know how to do it right off the top of my head. I'd have to go look it up. But in command prompt, I've been using the command prompt a whole lot longer. In order to, it does the same thing, right? If I just run simple form, the form is running, right? The command prompt is blocked while the form is running. When I close the window, then the command prompt returns. Now, the reason I'm going through all this is because, there's a way to start the program. You say start simple form, like that. And then the command prompt in the background returns, okay? But you get a whole nother command prompt along with the window. And this becomes important when you're doing, testing with multiple windows and you're writing output from one window. So this is the command prompt associated with this window. Now, the only reason we have a command prompt, that powers up when we start this window is the way we compiled this window or this little program, this Windows Forms program, right? So the way that we compiled it, or the way I compiled it, was I used CSC and then I typed the name. So if we type /help, we will get a list of all the command compiler or the CSC, the C# compiler command options. So the /out and the /target is what we're interested in. If I just compile, like if I just say CSC and then space and type the name of the file to compile, it calls this default version of the target command. So /target executable. It's just create an executable. But if you don't want that, command prompt or command window to pop up with your window, with your GUI window, you want to target the Win executable. So you want to create a Windows executable. Now the way that you do that is you just go up here. I'm going to clear the screen and I'm going to type CSC /target, right? TARGET, and then WinX. So that means Windows executable, and then the name of the file. That's my source file. So CSC /target WinX space simpleform.csc. Now it'll compile, and it did. Now if I say start simpleform, then it doesn't pop up another window, right? It's running all on its own. So I can close that command prompt there, like that. So I'm just running my window. There's no command prompt associated with it because I compiled it as a WinX, right? It's helpful to have the command prompt so that you can write output for testing and stuff like that. So there's nothing wrong with that, right, when you're learning how to program. In fact, the next example that I'm going to write depends on that command prompt being there so we can see some output as we're dragging this window around and we see some of these events being trapped, okay? And I show you like how button clicks are detected in here, and so that's that window that becomes active. Now I click outside the window. You can see my projects folder. That means the desktop is active. Now the desktop is inactive, right? All right. So if I close this, then that closes that application. So I'm going to go back to my command prompt. All right. Now, see how every time I open my command prompt, that should be another video, but I can change the directory that command prompt starts in. But for now, I'm going to go back, CD, and drag in simple form, only because I'm lazy. All right. Back to the text. So this, just to review what we've done so far, object, the form, right? Form class is a container control, is a scrollable control, is a component. The way that you find all that stuff out is you go explore the, exploring the inheritance hierarchy in the .NET documentation, MSDN's documentation for whatever class you're trying to use. So we created the simple form app and we ran the window. All right, so, and we compiled it using the regular default compiler. Okay, so we can drag the window around. These screenshots are taken with Windows 7. I was running Windows 10. All right, but you got your title bar. All right, so let's go back and run that application again. All right, so we have the title bar is right up here, right? There's no text in it right now, so it's blank. All right, let's go back to the text. We can resize the window, all right, by dragging it. We can drag the window, move it around the desktop, okay? And that's kind of what we've done so far. The next thing I want to talk about is application messages, message pump, events, and the event loop. All right. When you're creating a Windows app, right, using a form, you're creating an event-driven program, okay? That means every time you move the mouse, every time you click a button on the mouse, type a keystroke, the operating system, Windows, is ready to respond to whatever you're doing. And each application is ready to respond. So either the keystrokes are interpreted by the operating system, and then they're passed to the appropriate application for handling. How does the operating system know how to do this? Okay, well, the magic happens in an event queue. Okay, so the first application structure is the system event queue goes into this diagram right here. It's figure 12-4 in chapter 12 in my book C# for Artists. Okay, so the majority of system-generated messages are placed into a data structure referred to as a system message queue. So the system message queue is this right here. That's your system message queue. And then, depending on which window you click in, right, either the application, it'll front messages either to that application or it'll forward messages to that application, right? So in this particular figure, I've got two windows. And if I click in this window up here at the top, this one up here at the top, I'll click up here so you can see the halo. If I click in that window, then the system message queue will forward those messages to that particular window. If I click in this application, it'll forward messages to this application down here, all right? And before I bore you with these message types, let's go into how you actually trap these messages if you wanted to see them in action. So there's a little program I wrote called Message Pump Demo. Okay, so I'm going to move this over here to the side so I can see it while I type, and I'm going to bring back up Windows 10. I'm going to shut this particular window down. I'm going to bring up, okay, I'm going to shut, then I'll quit this application. I'm going to close that source file. And I'm going to create a new one. Let me get my stuff together here. Projects. I'm going to create a new folder called Message Pump Demo. Okay. I'm going to bring up Notepad++, and I'm going to create a new source file. I'm going to save it. Actually, I already got a new one. Save as. Excuse me. Message Pump Demo. All right, save. Now, all right, so let's create this app using System. Oops, sorry. And using System.Windows.Forms. Okay, so public class message pump demo extends form. Now here in this case, in order to trap these messages, we have to implement an interface. So I message pump, or message filter. Message filter. So now this is not just a form, it's also a message filter, right? Because in C#.net, I can extend one class, right? So I'm extending form, and I can implement as many interfaces as I want. So I'm going to implement the iMessageFilter interface. Now the iMessageFilter interface is located in the System.Windows.Forms namespace, and it provides a method, right? I'm going to get to that here in a second. The method is called pre-filter message, and I have to implement that. So public bool pre-filter message, and it takes a ref, okay, to a message, and I'm going to call that, I'm going to make it M here as my parameter. All right, open brace, closing brace. Now, all I'm going to do for this method is I'm just going to say console right line M. So M is the message, and message, it's just going to write the message out to the screen. So return false. Quite honestly, I'm not sure why I have to return false here. I'm just doing it. And then now we need a main method, public static void main. Don't need any arguments. All right, so now I'm going to create an instance. Oh, pimp. Demo, there we go. Okay. I'm going to say mpd equals new message pump demo, right? All right, open brace, closing brace. So I've created me a new instance of message pump demo, which is the class that I'm creating, right? And sign that reference to the MP, or sign that address to the MPD reference. Now what I'm going to do is say application. There's another method on here on the application class. We saw application.run, right? Application.run allows us to run the window, or run the window app. Application has another method called add message filter. Now it needs a reference to a MPD. Well, it needs a reference to a message filter. Well, guess what? This application is a form, and it is an iMessage filter, so it needs a reference to an iMessage filter. So MPD, right? So good. And now I'm going to say application run MPD, just like that. So I'm going to save this. Now let's compile it. Notice what I did there. I just did csc star.cs. Okay, so everything compiled fine. Now, in this case, I want to see, right? I want to see, the messages as they print to the console. So let me minimize this Notepad++. I minimize this window. Shut that one down. Okay, so I could say start, right? Message pump demo, or just write message pump demo, because I need a window anyway. Oh, sorry. DR. Oh, that's simple form. I got to change directories. Never mind. CD ... and then CD message pump demo. Right. Clear the screen. Message. All you got to do is type in the first couple letters and hit tab, and it'll complete it for you. So message pump demo, it's going to pop up. Are you kidding me? DIR. Oh, I didn't compile. I was in the wrong directory. Okay, no wonder. Okay, sorry. So let's do this again. I'm really losing my mind. CSC star.cs. Now we've compiled the right class, right? CLS. Now let's type message pump demo. Now it should run. Yay! Okay, finally. Okay, so here what we have here. Notice my cursor. Okay. My cursor is outside of my window. My cursor, and if we go over here, you'll see the background, right? All this. These are the outputs of the mouse of the messages. So the types of messages that I'm generating here, I'm in that. See, when I go into the window, it generates messages. So what am I doing? I go into the window, and you'll see mouse move, mouse move. Now when I stop, mouse hover. So mouse move, mouse move, mouse hover, mouse move. These messages come pretty fast. So mouse move, mouse leave. You see mouse leave, mouse. Oh wait, mouse leave. We've got mouse move, mouse move, mouse move. Now what do I want to move the window? Okay. Mouse button. We got mouse down, so I have to click the mouse button. I'm in the window. Mouse enter, or mouse move, I should say, and then so I click the button. You see WM very bottom, NCL button left, button down. That's my left button. If I do, let's see, I got NC R. So you see the difference. Look, I'm clicking my left button. Sorry, I'll click my left button. And it's a left button down. I click my right button, and it's an NCR button down. Okay, and I get that the properties thing pops up. So I'm moving around, moving around, moving around. Now watch when if I resize, it doesn't. There we go. We're just trapping the at this point the buttons, right? I'm not really printing out any window properties. So it doesn't really care, right? If I'm outside, so if I'm in this window now, right? I'm in my command prompt window. I clicked on my command prompt. Now there's this concept of Z order with Windows, right? So I've got my command prompt window is in front of my other little app message pump demo. Now my message pump demo is in front of my command prompt. So I'm generating events. When I hover over, your operating system keeps track of where this mouse is at, right? So this application is in the bounds of this window. So let's talk about bounds for a second. Let's go back to the app, or let's go back to the text. Oops, let me bring this PDF over. All right, so message filter. So we saw this, right? You're moving around, you get these mouse. Oh, I didn't do keys. Let's go back. How forgetful of me. Okay, so let's come back up here. Let's move this up, and then let's click on this app. Okay, now, so if I enter keystrokes, so key, char, key, right? I'm entering keys. So these are the events, right, that are happening in this window. Any event, and they're being trapped because my cursor and in other words, the focus is on this window. The operating system knows that this window has the focus, so it's sending those keystrokes and those mouse clicks to that message queue. I double clicked, right? Now let me come back down here. All right, sorry. Ooh, there we go. I'm in an endless crazy loop. There we go. Got it back. So minimize this. All right, so messages, right? This is nice to know stuff. I'll use a very small minor variation of this message pump demo here in a second to show you how screen coordinates, right, are generated. But let's talk about that real fast, and that'll be the last piece of this lecture. So, when you're working with Windows, you'll need to understand screen coordinates, okay? So let's take a brief look here. A window is drawn on a computer screen, okay, at a certain position. The placement of the window's upper left corner falls on a certain point within the screen's coordinate system, and the basic unit of measure, right, is a pixel. The pixel is the basic unit of measure. Well, we pretty much all knew that, all right? But you have your Y and your X axis. The Y is your vertical axis up and down. The X axis goes left to right, but the origin is in the upper left hand corner. So if you think of your screen, you got your screen. Okay, so I've got my screen. In the background, you see my screen, right? You only see a piece of my screen, but for all practical purposes, the upper left-hand corner of what you see in Yahoo is the left-hand corner of my screen. Now I'm putting, see this window here? I'm putting this window up in the upper left-hand corner of the screen. So the upper left-hand corner of this Adobe Acrobat Reader, where my little expando thing is, my cursor position, that's the upper left-hand origin of that window. I'm putting that window in the upper left-hand corner of my screen. So now the upper left-hand corner of this window is at an offset from my screen. So we'll take a look at that concept here in a second. All right, so let's come down. Now, here's a nice picture. All right. So I have the notion of my screen. Let's just say this is my screen here. X-axis is going to left and right, it's horizontal, and my Y-axis is going up and down. And then I've got my window, okay, and it's got a left origin in the upper left-hand corner, and my bounds of that window. So my bounds are the dimension. If my window is 100, right? If my window, all right, let's get this right. I have an upper left starting point. The bounds of my window are 100 and 275. So where do those first two measurements come from? If the corner, upper left corner of my window on the computer screen is 100 pixels to the left of the edge of that computer screen, then its upper left X coordinate is 100. If it's 275 pixels down from the top of the screen, its Y coordinate for the upper left hand edge, a corner, is 275 pixels. So upper left hand corner is 100, 275, and then if my window is 600 pixels wide and 300 pixels deep or long, like, you know, here's the width, right, and then here's the depth, not the depth, but the height of that window, then that point is 100 plus, right, 600, you know, for the total, but 600. So 600 is the width and 350 is the height. So the total bounds is 100 and 275 for the upper left-hand corner and 600 and 350, because those are the measurements of that window, okay? Now, if I have a button inside of that window, like right here, right? There's a button inside of that. Here's my computer screen. There's the computer screen. Here is the window inside of that computer screen. And here is, here is the button inside of that window. It says click me. The bounds of that button, if it's 125 upper left-hand corner, and the button is 300 pixels long or wide and 100 pixels high, then its origin or its bounds are 125, 125, and 300 and 100. All right. All right. So let's take a look at this and see if this is true. All right. How do we test this? Well, there's another little program we can write. We can modify the iMessage pump program that we just wrote, and I call this particular version of that program show bounds. So all we do is instead of writing out the message that we get from the iMessage filter, we just say this.bounds. In other words, there's a property on a form called the bounds, right? So we just want to print the bounds out, okay, and see what that looks like. So let's go ahead and go back to the code. And instead of creating a whole new program, I think what I'm just going to do is change the iMessage filtered pump demo, right? iMessage pump demo. And instead of writing M, I'm going to write this.bounds. This.bounds. There we go. And close that. Now I'm just going to compile this again. All right, and run it again. Okay, so now here I've got my X and Y. It looks a lot, right? It's not quite that. So I'm going to move this closer to the edge of my real screen. So let me show you what I'm doing. Here I'm moving my whole VM down to within my broadcast rectangle. So there's the upper left-hand corner of my VM. Here's my command prompt, right? And let me just get it out of the way. Here's my window. So I'm going to move this up here. So you'll see the bounds move. So I'm getting closer and closer to the upper left-hand corner of my window. And now I'm Y2, I'm 2 pixels down. Now I'm 0, I'm -7, which means I went over a little bit. So let me come back this way. -5, X and 0. There's the left-hand edge, according to that right there. Okay, so I'm at Y2. So there's the upper left, Now when I create my window height is 300 by 300. My window's width is 300. The window's height is 300. Notice that the height and width don't change. That's part of your bounds, but your upper left and X and Y coordinate for the upper left-hand corner of that window change, and that just shows you where the window starts and where the window ends, right? So the origin point of that window is 6 at this point, right? Down here in the lower part. Down here in the lower part of my broadcast screen. Let me bring my command prompt up so we can see the whole thing. Here's my window. All right. Now the upper left-hand corner is at 1,000 X and Y is 408. But still my lower, my width and height of the window is 300. I can change that, right? If I grab this window and move it. Now you'll see that my lower right-hand corner coordinates have changed. Okay, so that's bounds. That's your window bounds. Now, if I put something in my window, like a button, okay, well, then it would have its own local coordinates. It would be relative to the window. My window running in my operating system is relative to my computer screen, okay? So the upper left-hand corner of any window is relative. So there we go. You can check the bounds. You can display the bounds as they're changing by using the iMessage filter interface, right? These are nice educational exercises to get to know how Windows work. All right, so Windows provide a lot of functionality right out of the box. And in my next video on graphical user interface programming with Windows.Form, Forms.Form class, I'll show you how to add a button and how to trap the event, how to respond to different events inside of a window, and how to manipulate window properties like the background, the color, and the text, okay? I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any requests for special videos, or if you have questions or answers, you can email me directly at rick@pulpfreepress.com. I'll be happy to answer. And if you need a good book on C# programming, check out C# for Artists 2nd edition. I don't think you'll be disappointed. And have a great day. It was a pleasure sharing my knowledge with you.